Hey everyone, my name is Perry and welcome back to the cassette phase. So it's been a couple of weeks since we last talked about movies and VHS tapes. So I'd like to do that again today, but this time around we're going to talk about some of my most viewed comedies on VHS. And comedy as a genre can be pretty vast and varied. You've got movies that could be considered more like action comedies or adventure comedies, and things like supernatural comedies and horror comedies and sports comedies and so on and so forth. So for my list today, I'm going to be sticking primarily to movies that I just consider to be comedies. And while there will be other elements from other genres within all of these, comedy will be kind of the main attraction. So we'll do 10 today with a couple of honorable mentions mixed in. And I'm going to do my best to rank these movies based on how many times I've actually watched them. And as usual around here, in order to qualify for the list, I have to actually own the movie on VHS. And everyone likes a funny movie, right? Well, let's go over to the rug and talk about a few of my favorites. Sound like fun to you? Come hang out. Okay everyone, welcome back to the rug. And the first movie that I want to talk about today, the first honorable mention, I guess, is Three Men and a Baby. Now, a lot of my experiences with movies, like the first time I saw some of these, they actually showed these to us at daycare when I was real little, like 5, 6 years old, 7 years old. I went to this daycare after school. Shout out to the School of Creative Play in Oklahoma City. And they would just sit us down in front of a little CRT TV and put a movie in the VCR. And they'd have those really uncomfortable school chairs that we would sit in with our snack and watch a movie. And this was one of those that I remember watching there at that daycare center. Best comedy ever? No. But one of my most watched for sure. You got Tom Selleck, Steve Guttenberg, and Ted Danson. Kind of your typical fish out of water situational comedy. I was thinking about Steve Guttenberg for a second. On The Simpsons, didn't they say that the Stonecutters organization, weren't they the ones that kept Steve Guttenberg working, kept him a star in the industry? Oh, that's funny. But yeah, just some funny stuff in this. Some really great 80s scenery, and interior decorating all throughout. And then, of course, there's the infamous playground story that there was a ghost in the background in one of the scenes, and it was really just ended up being a cardboard cutout. I don't know if I've talked about that on the channel before, but I always think of that when I think about this movie. Yeah, really fun one. I think the opening song that plays is really catchy. Kind of sticks with you the rest of the day after you've watched it. But yeah, just kind of a classic, light-hearted 80s comedy movie right there. And the other honorable mention that I want to talk about briefly today is Mannequin. Does it get much more 80s than a movie like Mannequin? If somebody tried to present a movie like this nowadays, would it just get laughed at and just nobody would take it seriously as an actual feature presentation? It's pretty ridiculous, but definitely a product of its time, as most of these will be. But I still enjoy watching it. For some reason, this is kind of like one of those comfort movies that I'll just put in and have it running in the background. Real 80s on the font there with the Mannequin. Some guys have all the luck. And this is, of course, Andrew McCarthy and Kim Cattrall. Is that how you say her name? Love this retro box art on here. And this is another movie that has really memorable music and song choices in it. And you'll hear me talk about that quite a bit with some of these. But yeah, pretty ridiculous premise, but hey, still a fun movie to watch every now and again. Video Treasures. Yeah, I have the second one too. I don't like it nearly as much, but there'll always be a place on my shelf for Mannequin. Okay, so I guess let's start with number 10 on our countdown of my most viewed comedy movies on VHS. And let's hang out with Eddie Murphy. You know, I feel like you can't have a list like this without having Beverly Hills Cop. It's like it's kind of like the essential 80s comedy, although more of like an action comedy, like I mentioned in the intro, but just hilarious all the same. Plenty of laugh out loud moments in this one. Lots of things that are quotable and memorable. Great soundtrack, film score, all of that. Another one that's got plenty of sequels to choose from. Some good, some not so good, but yeah. There's really not much I can say about this one. I'm sure everyone's seen this one multiple times, me included. So I just figured it had to have an actual solid spot on the list, coming in at number 10, Beverly Hills Cop. So for number 9, we're gonna see a couple of actors that I'm just a huge fan of, and John Candy specifically is gonna show up on this list more than once. But here we've got Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And one of the reasons that I've seen this one so many times is because it feels very seasonal to me. It feels kind of like a Thanksgiving tradition that I have to put it in and watch it at least once a year, you know, starting off the holiday season. But even if you're not watching it around Thanksgiving, it's just still a hilarious movie. How can you not watch the scene on the airplane where John Candy is taking his shoes and his socks off and just not crack up? That's still hilarious to me every time I see it. And Steve Martin, as always, just does an awesome job in this. Their chemistry was on point for sure in this one. R.I.P. to the great John Candy. Does anyone else watch this one every year? I just have to. I feel like it's one of the best comedies from the 80s. To be watched anytime, of course, but especially around Thanksgiving. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So for number 8, we've got our first entry from the 90s. Early 90s. With Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. From 1991, I believe. I find this movie to be pretty hilarious in spots. You know, kind of cheesy and hokey in some other spots. That's to be expected. A funny kind of little fun fact about this movie is the sheet that they wrap her in as they're pulling her through the hallway is the same California Raisins bed sheets that I had as a kid, and I still actually have them here in the den in the closet to this day. Always makes me laugh when I see that. And I know this is technically 90s, but it still feels kind of like an 80s movie to me. It feels like a late 80s comedy movie. Of course, you've got Christina Applegate and Keith Coogan, I believe is his name, who was also in another babysitting-themed movie from around this time, which is kind of funny. We're gonna typecast that kid into the babysitter movies. And I believe this one is actually an old Blockbuster copy. Yep. I actually love when that happens. Be a friend, rewind when you reach the end. Yeah, see, we all thought that it always just said be kind, rewind. But it looks like Blockbuster, at least for this one, had their own little spin on it. Be a friend, rewind when you reach the end. HBO Video, 1991. Anyone else like this one? I feel like it's a pretty good one. So we're at what now? Number 7, I believe. And we've got Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Now, is this the funniest movie that we're talking about today? No. It does have some pretty funny stuff in it, especially with Sean Penn as Spicoli. But I think the reason I like to watch this one as much as I do is just how accurately it captures this specific moment in time. I mean, can you really get any better than that opening scene in the mall? Is there a more accurate depiction of 80s mall culture in any movie? I don't know that there is, at least for me. And you got some famous scenes in this one, especially with Phoebe Cates, of course. But yeah, I mean, just another classic 80s comedy. If you haven't seen this one in a while, get it back out. It's still pretty fun to watch, if nothing else, for that opening scene in the mall. Okay, so for number 6, we're venturing dangerously close into rom-com territory here, but that's okay. We've got Can't Buy Me Love. Now, let me tell you how I first was introduced to this movie. I had seen the movie called Explorers. If you haven't seen Explorers, that's a great, science fiction 80s kid flick. Really underrated. It gets a little weird at the end, but it's pretty awesome for the first 2/3 of the movie. And the girl that was in that movie that the main character had a crush on was Amanda Peterson. Well, I was flipping through the channels one day. This was probably in the mid-90s, actually. I don't know that I ever actually saw this in the 80s. And I recognized, hey, that's the girl from Explorers, even though she's not even in that movie very much. And so I stuck with it. And I thought it was cool. It's got, what's his name from Grey's Anatomy? Is it Dempsey? Patrick Dempsey. And it's pretty much your standard 80s high school fare. But of course around here we appreciate that. And it's about as predictable as it comes. If you've never seen it, you'll know what's going to happen, just a few minutes in. But that doesn't take away from the fact that it's just a fun 80s movie through and through. There's a scene right there towards the beginning where she's walking through her house, and just like the way the carpet looks and the bedding and the lamps and the pictures on the walls, I mean, it is seriously like time travel. It is a time capsule of the 80s home, especially in that particular scene. But money can buy popularity, but it can't buy me love. There you go, coming in at number 6. All right, so we've entered the top 5, and our first entry is very, very deserving of that, and that's The Great Outdoors. So we've got our second appearance of John Candy here on the countdown, and I just love this. It's just Dan Aykroyd plays such a great jerk in this movie, and just over the top, kind of like slapstick, nature, outdoorsy, related comedy in this one. Another comfort movie for me, though, honestly. Love putting this one on when I can't think of anything else to watch. It's enjoyable every time. And she's not in this movie very much at all, but the girl that's like the love interest for the son, I just watched The Boy Who Could Fly. I hadn't seen that in a while, and I found it on VHS, and you'll see that in the next VHS tape pickups video that I do here pretty soon, but I'd never realized that was the same girl. I don't remember her name, I'm sorry, it's Lucy something, but yeah, I've always thought of this as kind of a summer movie. Makes you want to get out and go on a road trip. Go stay at a cabin somewhere, at a lake. go hiking through the forest. Just watch out for bears, of course. Pretty hilarious stuff, especially John Candy. How can you not like the great outdoors? So coming in at number 4, and I won't have a lot to say because what can you really say that people don't already know about Ferris Bueller's Day Off? I mean, this is probably one that we've all seen a million times. You know, ironically, I think I watched this one day when I was homesick from school. And I remember thinking that was funny at the time. And as I'm looking at this box art, I want to call out the attention that to your attention that whoever was doing the layout and the art design for these VHS sleeves back in the day, they loved their just basic cutout, you know, empty background, just basic, like crude cutout. I mean, look at this. Let me take you back through really quick. You got it here. You've got it again here. You've got it again here, although a little bit lesser there, but still. There it is again. And there it is again. Never noticed that before, but it's funny. So one of the most quotable and memorable movies of the 80s, you know, a John Hughes classic. Not much to say about it that hasn't already been said, but let me see if I can get it out here for you. There we go. PG-13 from Paramount, 1986, 103 minutes. Pretty good runtime. Another good movie that's just, you know, if you can't think of anything else to watch, or if you're flipping through channels or you're flipping through the streaming services, you can't go wrong putting on old Ferris Bueller. Now, number 3 is as high on the list as it is because of just how many times I watched it as a kid. We had a copy of this, not the commercial release, but we had it taped off of TV. I don't know if I got it from a friend or if we just had it all along, but for whatever reason, I watched Adventures in Babysitting about 100 times. So here we've got our second movie on the list that's centered around babysitting. And this time you've got Elizabeth Shue, and again Keith Coogan. Now that's a great 80s movie cover right there. And I've seen that parodied before for like Stranger Things and some other more modern properties, but it's just great. I mean, you know pretty much what you're gonna get just by looking at that. And so when you're walking through the video rental places back in the day, and you see that, it looks like something you want to check out, especially with that that font and everything, and the colors. Just great stuff. Now this is not critically acclaimed stuff here, guys. These are movies that I loved as a kid that have kind of followed me into adulthood, that I still like to revisit from time to time. Well, you know, is it based in nostalgia primarily? Of course, but that's okay. You can still enjoy things that you're nostalgic about. Great live music scene in this one, where they tell them nobody leaves without singing the blues. How many times in 80s movies was there some kind of live music, live bands playing on a stage somewhere, whether it was at a school dance or they went to a concert? It just seemed like for a while there, for like a short period of time, they always liked to work in live music. And I don't know if that was like cross promotion with like record labels or what that was, but or they just knew that their target demographic was into, you know, rock music and things like that. I don't know, but watch a few of these movies and you'll see several examples of that. But yeah, solid number 3 on my list here, Adventures in Babysitting. All right, guys, we're getting close to the top here. Number 2, Uncle Buck. Now, I love this movie. I've already talked a little bit about John Candy today, but this is probably my favorite performance of his. Just hilarious. and also heartfelt, and warm and kind too, but funny through and through. He's crude, he's crass, he's family. That pretty much says it all. And of course, you had Macaulay Culkin here before Home Alone. And also, I forgot this actress's name, but I believe she's in Now and Then, which is a great 90s movie. But yeah, speaking of Home Alone, as we get closer to the holidays, I'm sure I'm going to talk about holiday movies on VHS. And I do love Home Alone, but if we're looking at Macaulay Culkin's, famous pictures, give me this one. I prefer this one any day of the week. And again, we've got that font that was similar to what we saw on Mannequin. If you watched my recent Synthwave playlist mixtape video, we saw this same font on the album art for a lot of those artists. It's funny. Yeah, just what can you really say? I think they used the music well in this one. Just a good mixture, a good balance of heart and humor, which is something that I always appreciate. And yeah, just absolutely one of my most watched tapes of any genre, really, but really especially for comedy. Okay, we've made it to the top spot. Number 1 most watched comedy movie on VHS, and it's probably not even really that close. We've got National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. And you guys are probably thinking, oh, well, that's cheating. That's a holiday movie, so of course you've seen it a million times. But yes, that's part of it. And my family does love this one too, so we do have this on pretty much continuously throughout the holiday season. But I just think as a movie, as a comedy film, I think it stands alone. I think it's just that good of a movie. It's funny. It's got a great story. The performances are amazing, in my opinion. And yes, it's a Christmas movie. It's a holiday movie, but you can watch this any time of year, really, and still enjoy it. You'll crack up. Yes, we will. And that artwork there from the movie poster is just iconic at this point. Yeah, this is by far, to me, the best of the vacation movies. And I like the other ones a lot, but this one's just on a different level for me. It's just one of those movies that's been with you pretty much your whole life, for the most part. I can remember watching this at my grandparents' house and seeing my grandfather crack up at it. I can remember watching it, when my kids were babies and as they've grown up, and it's really become just part of our holiday traditions. Even with some of the language and subject matter, that's okay. Yeah. Say what you will about good old Chevy Chase, but he's great in these movies, and especially in this one. I mean, I could quote this movie all day long. Especially some of the stuff that between him and Cousin Eddie. But am I the only one that watches this any time of year? Is this just for Christmas time only, or is it something that you guys will watch, whenever you see it on? Either way, it's definitely number 1 on my list for comedies. And it's towards the top for just movies in general as well. And there we are. So I hope you all enjoyed taking a quick look back at some really funny movies from the 80s and the 90s. Did your favorite make the list? If not, don't worry. There will be a lot more videos where we talk about comedies and all kinds of movies really coming soon. So if you'd be up for more of that type of thing, consider subscribing. But for now, and as always, relax, enjoy life, and be kind. We'll see you in the next one.